So if you haven't seen my earlier episode on Immaril, Elfame Elite, make sure you check it out at some point because, yeah, this is a very exciting commander, an Elf Ball commander that can one-shot KO an opponent pretty easily. But don't leave just yet, because although it's not spoiler season, we've got yet another spoiled commander to talk about with Maeve, Insidious Singer. And I guess I probably should have already mentioned that these commanders are from the new Game Night product coming out in October, but we got a sneak peek at them yesterday, so that's why I'm talking about them today. Regardless, because the image is somewhat grainy, I decided to make a custom version of the card. Thank you, MTG.design, for that. And anyways, Maeve is a 3/4 Siren that costs 2 blue. By paying 2 and a blue, you can goad target creature, and whenever that creature attacks one of your opponents this turn, you draw a card. And of course, a goaded creature attacks each combat Fable and attacks a player other than you Fable until your next turn. So this commander may only have one ability, but it has a ton of potential and it can do a lot of exciting things. Now, obviously, you need to be careful with how this commander is worded and when you're going to be utilizing that ability. Again, it specifies whenever that creature attacks one of your opponents this turn, draw a card. So on your turn, yes, you could goad an opponent's creature, and that creature has to attack in their next combat and not attack you Fable, but then you don't get that card advantage. Now, if you do need that immediate card advantage on your turn, you actually could goad one of your own creatures if you're going to attack with it anyways to actually draw that card. So obviously there's a lot of different ways that you can utilize this ability and a lot of different times that you're going to want to utilize it. That being said, the vast majority of the time, you're going to be utilizing this on an opponent's turn to goad one of their creatures to attack someone else. And goading is a very powerful thing. Forcing your opponents to attack each other and do your dirty work for you, well, that's, not only fun, but also very effective. You can force opponents to swing with creatures that they don't want to swing with, like maybe they've got a commander that's got an awesome effect or an awesome ability, but they actually don't want to send that commander into combat, into danger, and now you force them to do that. Or, someone has a big bad Eldrazi or something just massive as well. Yeah, just make them send that into combat at someone else and take that player out instead. So with the right build, this commander can be incredibly effective at controlling the board and also drawing you a ton of cards in the process. Now, if you are interested in this commander, make sure you check out that link in the description below, which has the list of the cards I'm talking about on this episode. Because when a new exciting commander is spoiled, even if it's really far out like this one, again, I think that new product is coming out in October, the prices of certain cards that work well with that commander can still go up in the meantime. So yeah, if you're interested in this commander, make sure you check out that link. And now with all that said, let's jump into the cards. Now the first card that came to my mind is actually a pretty expensive one, I will mention that. I think it's around $30 or so at this point, but it is a perfect one for this commander if it's in your budget range or if you already have it. Training Grounds. It's an enchantment for just a single blue mana that says, activate abilities of creatures you control cost up to 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the amount of mana and ability cost to activate to less than 1 mana. At 3 mana, your commander's ability to goad a creature and generate card advantage is still a pretty good deal, but at 1 mana, it is absurd. With this in play for just a single blue mana, you are essentially saying, attack someone else and draw me a card. So you can generate an absurd amount of card advantage with that, and you can cause a lot of problems for your opponents. But again, this card is $30 for a reason, and yeah, you're going to have to pay up in order to get this one for this commander. That being said, there are also plenty of budget cards that work very well with this commander as well. Another thing that definitely benefits this commander is just ramping a ton. Again, this commander's ability is not a tap ability, so you can just generate absurd amounts of mana and dump that into your commander when you need to. So of course, hyper-efficient mana rocks like Soul Ring, Thran Dynamo, and Gilded Lotus can come in handy. Now, Soul Ring actually was underneath $1, so within my budget range for a hot second, and now unfortunately it's back up to I think $1.08. So yeah, unfortunately, 8 cents over budget for me. And of course, I would love to see Thran Dynamo and Gilded Lotus get more reprints, and those each essentially tap for 3. Thran Dynamo is 4 mana, Gilded Lotus is 5 mana, but does tap for 3 mana of any one color. Now, obviously, you need to utilize blue mana for your commander's ability, but of course, you've got lands for that as well, and other mana rocks too. And yeah, outside of these, of course, there are a ton of fantastic mana rocks that you can utilize. I mean, Everflowing Chalice is one that comes to mind where you can just dump an absurd amount of mana into that and be able to goad a lot of things. This is one of those commanders that can benefit you from leaning heavily into mana rocks because it's just a massive mana sink. One that is especially effective with this commander, though, is Victory Chimes. It has tap a player of your choice adds colorless, so yeah, we're going to choose ourselves. It says untap it during each other player's untap step. So this basically pays for 1 mana every single time of our commander's ability. And speaking of untapping, and like Training Grounds, another very expensive card, Unwinding Clock. It says untap all artifacts you control during each other player's untap step. With this in playing enough mana rocks, it can get really absurd to the point where you could probably just goad all of your opponent's creatures every single turn and be able to just draw an absurd amount of cards as well, and once you're set up, it's going to be very hard for you to be stopped. But yeah, this is a $16 card for a reason at this point. Two much more budget-friendly cards, though, that can really help you out with this commander are cards like Teferi's Ageless Insight and Thought Reflection. Ageless Insight says, if you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. And Thought Reflection is essentially that exact same thing, but without that restriction. If you would draw a card, draw 2 cards instead. So this can essentially double up on the amount of card advantage that our commander is generating us with its ability. Our commander essentially becomes a goad engine that is also just basically a divination every single time we activate. So yeah, with either of these, and especially with both of them in play, things can get pretty absurd. Now, some other kinds of cards to consider, though, which can be incredibly effective with this commander, are ones that involve targeting. Willbreaker says, whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes the target of a spell or ability you control, gain control of that creature for as long as you control Willbreaker. This is actually pretty straightforward. Now, your commander is just basically, okay, pay 3 mana, steal your creature. Now, there are certain trade-offs to this. I mean, stealing a creature is fantastic, but unless you're doing it on your turn, you're not getting any card advantage then out of your commander's ability. Because when you're gaining control of that creature and it's goaded, well, if it's on an opponent's turn, it's not going to be attacking. And if you're doing that your first main phase on your turn, great! You get to gain control of an opponent's creature and attack with it and get some card advantage, but also you're going to be sending it, into danger potentially, and it might get taken out. But obviously, yeah, a repeatable way to just keep stealing your opponent's creatures for 3 mana is pretty fantastic. And speaking of fantastic, a fantastically brutal card with this commander is Dismiss into Dream. It says each creature your opponents control is an illusion addition to its other types and has, when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So with this in play, your commander is just basically, hey, pay 3 mana, take out any of your opponent's creatures. And another one that might help in certain circumstances is Cowardice. It says whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, return that creature to its owner's hand. So temporary removal, but still one that can be effective in certain situations, and keep in mind that you could target one of your own creatures if you want to save it and bounce it back to your hand. That being said, again, be careful with these because it kind of shuts down your, normal game plan of goading your opponent's creatures and drawing cards. But it does give you some kind of alternative incredible value. I mean, again, Willbreaker, stealing your opponent's creatures for 3 mana, what's not to love? Moving on, though, obviously this deck is going to revolve very much around the commander, so yeah, protect your commander with things like, either Swiftfoot Boots or, any of those equipment that give hexproof or, Giant's Amulet. That's another one that can be fantastic with this commander. It says equipped creature gets +0/+1 and has this creature as hexproof as long as it's untapped. So yeah, don't attack with your commander and you're fine. And of course, there's plenty of other very expensive equipment, like, Darksteel Plate, equipped creature is indestructible, and, this equipment's indestructible, so, yeah, if you're willing to spend a bit more, yeah, you can get some better protection, but, yeah, I mean, Swiftfoot Boots these days is pretty budget-friendly, and obviously, again, like Giant's Amulet, plenty of fantastic ways to protect your commander. Also, some other kinds of cards that you might want to consider are cards that can actually incentivize your opponents to swing very specifically at one player, maybe like something like a Curse of Verbosity. It says Enchant Player, whenever enchanted player is attacked, you draw a card, each opponent attacking that player does the same. So with this, you might not even have to goad an opponent's creature to actually, again, convince them to swing at this player specifically. Or even if you are goading them to do so, you're still getting a benefit out of that attack. And you can also make those goaded creatures hit even harder with something like Crown of Doom, which says whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control gets +2/+0 until end of turn. And of course, we will not be keeping this for long though, by paying 2, target player other than Crown of Doom's owner gains control of it, activates this ability only during your turn. So again, incentivizing or at least benefiting further from your opponents swinging at each other. And another type of card that can really help you out in certain situations is Illusionist Gambit. Now you can only cast it during the Declare Blocker step on an opponent's turn, and when you do so, you remove all attacking creatures from combat and untap them. After this phase, the Ritual Combat phase, each of those creatures that attacks that combat if able, they can't attack you or a planeswalker you control that combat. So this is a great way, again, even if you're not goading your opponent's creatures and they think that you're the threat and they want to swing out at you, you're like, okay, cool, you swung out at me. Now we're going to take those creatures and you're going to go swing them somewhere else. So again, just another way to have your opponents actually do your dirty work for you. And also, when you start playing cards like these, it's going to make them very wary to actually swing at you because there might be unforeseen consequences. Now, goading is very effective in a game of Commander, but obviously it is a lot less effective when it comes to end of the game when it's just a one-on-one scenario. But yeah, in blue, you've got plenty of ways to finish out the game, and one that can still utilize your opponent's creatures is a card like Reigns of Power. It says, untap all creatures you control and all creatures target opponent controls. You and that opponent each gain control of all creatures the other controls until end of turn. Those creatures gain haste until end of turn. So, even if you've just been utilizing your opponent's armies to help take each other out, and finally there's one left standing and they've got a very powerful army, and you just have, even your commander, you're like, okay, I'll cast this, you can have my commander, and then I'm just gonna swing at you with your own army. Have fun. But yeah, you've got plenty of avenues to victory with a deck like this, even when you get to that one-on-one scenario. Overall, though, a very interesting commander, and one that I think a lot of players are gonna get really excited about. A commander that is a mana sink like this one can help control the board and force your opponents to do your dirty work for you, and also provide you card advantage at the same time can be fantastic. And again, there are those off-the-wall kind of plays that you can make with those targeting things like, Dismiss in a Dream and, Will Breaker, etc., etc., etc. There are definitely some unexpected things that you can do that can really take your opponents by surprise, and yeah, I'm really excited to see some builds built around Maeve. And again, if you are interested in this commander and interested in some of the cards I talked about today, make sure you check out that link in the description below for the list of the cards I talked about on this episode. And of course, also make sure that you're staying tuned to this channel for even more quick takes. And with that, this show is coming to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.